Okay, somebody else is in progress. All right, so Eve, why don't you start this? What memories do you that stick out to you, and at what point in your life?
Well, I remember, first of all, what I don't remember is when Wolf Lake was a marsh. Okay. Apparently I have friends who grew up in first of all, I'm from Whiting. Okay. So I live very close. I now live close to, like, when I was growing up, the first 5 years of my life, I was on Lake in Indianapolis, and now I'm at Atchison on 121st Street. And so I'm closer to it now. So as a child, we would go there swimming. There used to be a beach there.
Yes.
If you could call it a beach. I just remember it was so, I don't even know how to describe it. It was different from Whiting Beach because, well, of course, we went swimming in Whiting Beach as well. Okay. But and Whiting Beach was more, in my view, a beach because it was a nicer park. It looked like a park. It looked like a beach. It had sand. My memory of the beach at Wolf Lake was that it was just dirt.
Oh, okay.
And so it was not. And pretty shallow. I mean, you would walk out pretty, as I recall, kind of far before it started to get deeper. Yeah. And so that's kind of a young memory because I think at Wolf Lake, I had not yet learned how to swim. At some point, I took lessons at community center to learn how to swim. And then I was much more comfortable in the water. But I have kind of an unfortunate memory of Wolf Lake because when I stopped going there to swim with my friends to be there, I guess, because I developed a really bad rash on my back that we thought was a result of going into that water. And we didn't, back then, my mother didn't rush us to the doctor for just any little thing. My mother treated it herself at home. Okay. And with something from under the sink, I don't know what. But so I got over it. I mean, it was not a horrible thing, but it kept me from other activities. I remember, and I don't even remember how long it lasted, but we kind of assumed that it was from the lake. Now, whether it was or not, of course, again, we never went to see a doctor, so a doctor probably would have been able to determine how I acquired that rash. So, so that was kind of the end of that. But then later I would start to go swimming. My friends and I would go to Whiting Beach. But also when I was young, my father would take me ice skating. Apparently that was a very common experience, but I had to wait for my dad to take me because I was pretty young at the time. And it was before the years when I was allowed to go places on my own. So I would wait for him to be available for that, to go ice skating on Wolf Lake. So that meant, I mean, as I look back on that memory, I think, well, that means it had to be frozen, of course. So two things needed to come together. The lake had to be frozen. My dad had to be available. So it didn't happen a lot, but I had beautiful skates and I really liked doing that. That was really kind of a fun experience. So, and then more recent memories, I don't know how long ago, several years ago, I decided to start walking around the lake after they built the bridge on the other side. So I'm going to go walk over to there. I want to see that bridge. So walking along that path that goes in that direction, sort of, south and then west and then, kind of south and west, and then towards the bridge. I was kind of shocked and chagrined at how beautiful it was. I mean, it was like being somewhere else. It was not like being in the Calumet region. It was peaceful. There was all this natural growth, the water, the reeds, the Phragmites, bad guys that they are. But I mean, all the trees, everything. It was really beautiful. And I was kind of impressed because I always felt that the city of Hammond didn't do a very good job in making that into a park. I mean, it is a park. I love the walking path, but the park is like grass and trees. There's no design to it. Unlike, I hate to continue to make the comparison to Whiting Park, but Whiting Park has got like different areas to it. There's there's a hill, so there's a part on the one side of the hill and the other side of the hill, and they're just different areas to be in there. So there's more thought that went into the design, even in the very beginning, because the design of that park hasn't really changed much. I mean, they fixed it up to make it more beautiful, but that was really the lake side of it. So the rest of the park is pretty much intact with some nice amenities attached to it now. But Wolf Lake has always been, just like the beach was like dirt and water, wow. And someplace we went swimming. Of course, they had lifeguards there, so it really was a beach. And then at some point, I recall at some point they stopped having lifeguards there. So I don't know I don't know who decided that it shouldn't be a beach anymore, or how that happened. Anyway, so, but that walking path is just really nice. And I think that the rest of the park is a lost opportunity for the city of Hammond to really, again, develop it into, do some landscape, Yeah. The guy who designed Central Park needs to rise from the grave and come back, because something like that. I mean, some design to it, So that's my most recent. I mean, walking through there and walking along the George Lake path, of course, which is also beautiful and peaceful. And it's also kind of interesting because I have seen wildlife. There are fishermen on that end of Wolf Lake, which is always kind of a surprise to me. It's like, oh, people are fishing over here. And then there's the yacht club, the Ileana Yacht Club, which has been a source of curiosity to me for a long time, because I would see the sign for the yacht club, which is by the toll road on, is that 100, that's 112th.
112th Street, yeah.
So there's this like, this tiny little sort of unassuming sign, and then a chain, and then a dirt road. And it's like, there's a yacht club back here. What in the world? Well, I finally saw where it is. And it's the yacht, really kind of the yacht club for Wolf Lake. I mean, that's where boats who go out on Wolf Lake, I mean, that's where they dock, and there's a little yacht club there. So it was a place of discovery for me, most recently, in that way. So that's what got me interested in learning more about the lake. I've also spent some time driving around on the Illinois side, which is also very interesting to me, because it's a whole forest preserve back there. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff back there. And there also curiosity, like there's a train track that runs along its own, like it's got its own little berm over the lake. It's like, what is this? And are there trains still running on it? Of course, people fishing. There are people ice fishing over there, who I'm sure know where the most shallow parts are, because you wouldn't want to be on ice if it's very deep, I would imagine, unless it's really, really frozen. And then there are some duck blinds. There's all kind. I mean, it's just very interesting. And I was once again surprised to see how many people were fishing there, like in the summertime. People just hanging out in the middle of the day, just enjoying the weather, just enjoying the peace and quiet. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, combined, and we have bike rides several times a year, and it takes more than 2 hours just to view all the lakes in the area.
Wow.
And they just connected Wolf Lake to Powderhorn Lake, so that bike ride gets a little bit longer, but yeah, it is nice. And I do have to congratulate Hammond on putting in that bike path, because it takes you to things like the yacht club and in a really a very attractive way. And so and I meet a lot of Northsiders that are traveling down, and they end up in Munster at the place where they make beer.
Three Floyds.
Three Floyds. And so I'm always, because every once in a while I start talking to people as they're riding down, or they're talking to me, and I'm asking for directions and stuff. But I'm always intrigued at who's coming from the north side, and where they're coming from. Hyde Park, often a lot of riders from Hyde Park, but there are some from the north side that come down and just for Three Floyds, and then they have their beer and then they go back.
Oh my gosh, that's quite a ride from Hyde Park.
Yeah, well, yeah, but there are some from I run into even from the south side, south suburbs as well, and so they're. But I do have to agree, Whiting Park is very attractive, and it's very well organized over the years, and because I can remember playing tennis on the tennis courts, that are still there, right?
Yes. Yeah. You know what? I know the tennis courts. In fact, let me see if I can recall what's going on there. The tennis courts are gone.
Okay.
Recently gone, and Carolyn Marsh is trying to get the city of Whiting to make that green space a native area. There apparently is some mandate to from the state, I think, to designate certain amount of the park to native area, and I don't think that is totally complete yet, if I remember what I've read about this on Carolyn's Facebook page. And she has been going to meetings and trying to get them to take that space where the tennis courts were, and make that, like native plants. There are tennis courts there now by off of the 117th Street entrance that are new tennis courts, and that's by the little baseball stadium, the Little League stadium there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense too. But if Carolyn's involved in it, she'll want to have somewhat of a bird sanctuary as well.
Yeah, that could be. I mean, I think one equals the other in some respects, because when you bring native plants, then you bring the birds too. Exactly. I don't know about a bird sanctuary in particular, but she's trying to hold their feet to the fire about this to make sure that they get this done. And of course, we've talked about it at meetings with him and with Mayor McDermott too, particularly around his plan for the Clark Field property.
Okay.
And so they're wanting to build houses there, and the discussion in the group, you know, a lot of the citizens are wanting to have green space, but I think the mayor's idea of green space and everybody else's idea of green space are two different things, because he's saying there's a park across the street. Well, a big chunk of that now is like a parking lot. I mean, there's something that resembles grass there. They did put something down, but really that's supposed to be a parking lot for Festival of the Lakes. So it's not, you know, referencing what I had said before, it's not going to be, that would never be available for any kind of design thing going on, because it's got to be a parking lot. It's not paved. But so I think he thinks that's green space.
Yeah.
So, and that's not what everybody else is talking about.
But has Dave Mature been in those conversations?
Dave, I'm sorry, who?
Dave Matura.
I don't, possibly, I don't know who that is.
Yeah, okay. He lives in Whiting. Yeah, he's from Whiting.
Okay.
But he's been concerned about that new plan and has been attending some of the mayor's meetings, I think.
Right.
And I know Carolyn's been attending those meetings too.
Yes, she has.
But he's disappointed that there were so few that get up and talk. And he says, "Oh, they're all city employees." That's the way they've been meeting for the last 20 years. Ever since I became involved in anytime Hammond has a meeting, half of it is city employees, and the other half would be construction representatives from the
and realtors,
yes.
Yeah. Because Mayor McDermott's idea is that, or his reasoning is that there's a need for new housing stock in Hammond, and there's a market for it, and so then the realtors will pipe up and say, yes, that's true. So
that's right. He brings his crew along, and they outnumber usually everyone else. But and I just have to laugh at it, because apparently it's quite successful for the mayor because it works.
Yeah.
And he's been doing it. He's been in 20 years, and he's been doing it in there since from day one.
You know, I just had, when you said bird sanctuary, that made me flash on another delightful spot that I finally got to, although it takes some effort to get there, is the bird sanctuary on Lake Michigan. And I had heard about it, and then the first thing I heard about it was that they didn't want people in there because they didn't want anybody to disturb the birds. And then I said, "Oh, no, sure, you can go in there." So you have to go into the parking lot for the casino, and tell the guard you're going to the bird sanctuary so you don't have to pay or something. But I mean, I had to talk to a guard and go through a gate to park. And then go through that, and that's a delightful place. I mean, that's another place that is really kind of an out of this worldly place, because you are away from, and you cannot see any industry from that. And it's on like a little cliff. I mean, it's really kind of interesting because it rises up above the lake, and it's on like a little bluff or something above the lake. So you're looking down on the lake in certain sections. It's really kind of cool.
And the reason it's there, because it turned into a trash area. People would dump all their trash there. And so no one would go in there. And you had all those trees. And so it became bird sanctuary on its own. And thanks to Carolyn Marsh, she's the one that kept the city from turning it into pavement or something.
I thought they wanted to, I wasn't living here at that time. I heard that they wanted to build condos there.
Yes, they wanted, exactly. They wanted to build condos. And so Carolyn bought it and won. And so so she, so it remained a bird sanctuary to this day. But anyway, she was heavily involved in that, and there are no condos there.
Thank God for that.
Yes. Michael, what have you up to?
Yes, sir. Well, I've got a few thoughts, but just one thing on Whiting Park. It was in 1967, the only time I played baseball there for St. Francis de Sales, and they had a kid named Fritz on the mound who ended up with the Mets in '69, and he was Indiana's Athlete of the Year, probably the most famous athlete to ever play in Whiting. So like 6'5", about 250, and the park was far different.
Yes.
I was in center field, and I thought we lost the game in the last inning on a home run, but it was 30 degrees out. It was April. The wind was blowing in about 40 miles an hour. And just like you hear, I swear the ball, I thought it went over the fence and it blew back in and I caught it and the game was over.
All right.
Fritz was one less. He was so fast. I faced Ed Farmer. I faced the O'Tooles. I faced a lot of guys who made big leagues. We had several draft picks on my team. And I played in Latin America. But anyway, long story short, at that time when I was a junior, he was the fastest kid I ever saw. That's why he was the first round pick of the Mets. He was also Notre Dame. He had a full ride for football if he wanted it, or basketball. But when he threw, I was the only guy that hit the ball. I grounded out because he only pitched 3 innings. And everybody surrounded me and say, how did you hit that? Because it looked like, truly, when they talk about an aspirin, it was the fastest pitch I'd ever seen up to that point. So, wow. That's my great memory of Whiting Park. Okay. Now, I have a few minutes of thoughts on Wolf Lake. I'll start out, and I did some counting while you're doing this. 10 years old, live 102nd M, ride my bike, announced he had a Little League tryouts. There, by nature of the number of teams we had, I just did some quick math. There had to be 200 kids there. Everybody got 1 ground ball, 1 fly ball, and 3 pitches. And that's how they picked our teams. But that was at Eggers Woods.
Yeah.
So we heard, this is the year 1960 of all of the bomb scares, and we're looking out for some bomb coming from Russia and missiles. Yeah. So we always hide under our desks once a week, like that was going to save us. Well, my friend said, they have missiles at Wolf Lake. So we got on our bikes one day, 1960, rode our bikes way back up the trails. We encountered German Shepherd dogs and American soldiers with guns. And they said, hey, kids. And we turned around and we took off. I mean, this was a great place of mystery for us because we said, oh, my God, it's true. They must have the missiles here. So about 1962, a couple of friends and I, we take our bikes and go all the way out to Wolf Lake, 130th, because it would save us 12 cents if you took the bus. Yeah. And we got in a rowboat that we rented. I remember Mike Burke, Tim Sutko, and myself, we each put in $1 so we could rent a rowboat for $3. We rowed across the lake. I didn't know how to swim then. I was talking about terrifying and mystery. So we rowed across the entire lake to the empty silo where the missiles used to be. And we climbed this, it had to be a concrete, with stairs. It had to be, and then we climbed the ladder, about 30, 40 feet tall. And that was where they had the missiles. Of course, they had just vacated them.
Right.
And one of my friends who was into Wise, he said, yeah, let's go look at it. So we talk about exploring and, feeding your imagination as a young kid. And then later we fished there another time. And I don't recall ever catching a fish. I just remember being in a rowboat bouncing around with a bunch of worms on a hook. So I'm not sure any of us caught anything, but just enormous adventures for us. It was like this place of mystery that I knew these soldiers were and these big dogs. guards that told us that we couldn't go there. And then one other thought, I remember about 1967, I was in high school, and a friend of mine calls me up. He says, "You got to come to Wolf Lake right now. You got to come. Let's go." So picks me up. We go out there, and guess who's out there fishing? The Chicago Cubs, Fergie Jenkins and Billy Williams.
Oh my!
Found out that was their regular place. And there's one more interesting thing.
Oh my God!
I ended up. It's a long story. I was consulting with the Chicago Public Schools, and I was an administrator in DuPage County. So they hired me to come in, look at schools and stuff. And I ended up getting caught behind, I think it's Jeff Fort, where they were having the funeral of his son. And it was in a neighborhood right about where I lived when I was a little kid, like 79th Street, near the lake.
Okay.
And I had to drive through this. The cops, I think they thought I was a cop, and they let me go through, and there's this giant funeral. On my way home, I have the radio on. They had found his body. Jeff Fort's son was murdered in the gangs in Wolf Lake.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, the famous Chicago murders from the 30s. That's the so it seemed to be
Leopold and Loeb.
Leopold.
Yeah. And then one more thing I remember, it's typical neighborhood stuff because it was near Burnham Golf Course, the only place I knew how to golf at, right down the road there, about a mile south. That's where Al Capone had his fortune, at Wolf Lake or Burnham Woods. Of course, there's a bar by my house that there's a big program every year where he used to hang out here too. So, but it was all part of this mysterious place, you know, because even as a kid golfing out here, maybe we'll find Al Capone's fortune. Well, I said, with the kind of divots I'm getting, I might find it any minute, you know. So, I mean, to me, it was always an adventurous place. Wolf Lake was just surrounded with all this mystery. And, you know, there were other things around there that, you know, the famous S-curve. I know people who died on that. That's the entry to Wolf Lake. You know, there's so much intrigue around that place. And then became this beautiful nature place. So, I mean, I was... I found it the most mysterious place that I knew growing up.
Yeah. Yeah. In my book, there's a lot of, I don't know if there's a lot, but there's several kind of long entries about the Nike missile site and the adventures of folks when they were young.
Yeah, and being a child in that era, I mean, once a month they'd say, we have to go into our desks, it's a drill. And of course, even as a 10-year-old, I go, is this really going to protect us from a missile? Are you kidding? You know? And plus our classrooms then, because they were remodeling the school, were in the Quonset huts that were there for World War II.
Yeah.
It was on our school property. So they were remodeling our school, which is now closed. But I thought it was fascinating. We're in a military Quonset hut. Yeah. Getting this fear put in us every month, you know. Yeah. Watch out for those crazy Russians. They're going to get us all, you know. So,
well, yeah, the Nike missile is an anti plane.
They shoot down the missiles, apparently.
No, shoot down missiles. No, they were intended for bombers coming.
Oh, I see what you mean. Sure. Yeah. I knew they were like a defense mechanism over there.
Yeah, yeah. But they were, and no one ever launched any of those Nike missiles. And they were all around Chicago and in Northwest Indiana. There were a lot of different locations.
Yeah, we have a couple replicas in the old neighborhood. I'm not sure they're still up because I don't live there anymore, but they had disarmed, you know, instead of transporting back to Washington, they put them in various spots around our neighborhood and stuff.
Yeah.
I think they were there to protect the steel mills, though. I don't think they were there to protect me. They don't want the mills to get damaged.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Eve.
I'm sorry. Are you talking, well, when you went there as a kid, were you at the one at the William Powers site or on the Indiana side? Because there's one right off of Sheffield. I
just know we got in our rowboat, me, Mike Birkensutko, and we got on the Illinois side, Avenue O, and we rowed across. First time I ever rowed a boat, and we rowed it across the lake So we probably were in Indiana. I don't know. I
Because
just know we went far across.
Yeah. So that's probably, you went, or probably went to the one on off of Sheffield. And I haven't had the nerve to drive over there. There's like businesses, like some light industry over there. There's a little road off of Sheffield that goes to where the Nike missile site was. And then there's a little Nike missile at the William Powers, you know, at the forest preserve, at the entrance of, I don't remember what the name of that, 100, I don't remember what the number of that street is, 126 maybe, I don't know.
I'll have to look for it.
100, yeah, similar.
Is that 126?
I'm thinking it's,
because it's a street that goes directly west and it dead ends at the park, and that's where the entrance to the William Powers, you know, forest preserve is, and there is a little replica. This is the site of a, you know, Nike missile site.
Yeah, and the Nike missile site that's there, it points towards the launch site. It's kind of but I was there when they installed it, and then we had a fairly large meeting there to when it was unveiled, I think.
Do they still have that? It's like a concrete structure. What is 20, 25 feet tall? Are those still up?
Oh,
where they put the missile in, apparently.
Well, there were two. There was the launch site, and which is on the north side of the lake, and then on the south side of the lake, there was their they had 4 towers.
Yeah, it was the tower. Am I imagining it right? 25 feet tall, about.
Yeah.
Because I remember we climbed the ladder and up to the top, you know.
Yeah, but they were separate places, because that the launch site was a little bit apart from where they did the radar.
Yeah, well, they were gone, but when we looked at it, but it was exciting to, you know, be in that tower and all that stuff.
And I think it was about 10 years ago when they when some of those towers were beginning to I think some of them had fallen down or something.
Yeah, they'd be like 60 years old at least. Sure.
Yeah, they went in, removed them all.
Yeah.
Even though there were 1 or 2 that were still look halfway decent, but they didn't want to get anybody hurt, so they removed them. So it's all gone. But yeah, that was on the south end, and then the launch site's on the north end. And the launch site, they in the early 70s, they removed the last of the bad stuff from there. And then, because one of the things they did at the site was when they, I don't know if it was a weekly thing or a daily thing, but when they drained the missiles of fluid, they, instead of putting it into a container of some sort, they just threw it on the ground. And so, and over the years, I guess they fairly well contaminated the area. So the last of that contamination, I recall, was removed in the early 2006 maybe. And then, and of course, it's all covered over now. But it,
you know,
I don't know if they filled the all that or not.
You know, I mentioned this to you a year ago. I went to high school with a girl, Annette Barbier, and she lived in Hegewisch, and she ended up with a doctorate from Northwestern and became a world university instructor went everywhere, Indochina, even China, South America, and she did her art, but she based her art, I believe her website still might be around, Annette Barbier, B-A-R-B-I-E-R. And I remember sitting next to her in English, and I knew she was artistic. She won the art award, but but she became extremely well known with art and university. But she grew up in Hegewisch, and she continued to do photographs and do her drawings at the Hegewisch area of Wolf Lake. And I remember when she died, because I hadn't heard about her for years. I remember she's a quiet kid in high school, barely talked to her. But she was, a bright young girl, and her website was amazing. It was all based on Wolf Lake, basically the South End where she lived, and that kind of launched her career. But like I said, I was very surprised. She had quite a beautiful obituary article in the Tribune when she died. I didn't know she was this prominent in the art world. And so her foundation was all there, where she grew up as a kid and in high school. And so I'm just saying, she had some of her art on her website.
What is her first name again?
Annette.
Annette. Okay.
Barbier, as I recall, B-A-R-B-E-R-I or I-R-E. But I remember pulling her up from Columbia University, where she taught after she retired from Northwestern. But she had 40 years in the field. She did videos, but her foundation was always where she grew up and would walk around Wolf Lake and take pictures and, do drawings and things like that.
Jim, are you there? Thank you.
I see his name.
Yeah. Yeah, he's muted.
Sorry about that, Mike.
Okay.
I hit the button. I'm here. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, I did the same thing to start the session, so don't feel bad. How are you doing, Jim?
Oh, doing good. A few minutes late.
No problem. We had that gave Eve and Michael some time to tell their stories. Did you grow up in this area, Jim?
Did they do what?
Grow up near Wolf Lake?
Not recently. Probably about 3 weeks ago. Why?
Oh no, I mean, as I just had any memories of the water.
Oh, yeah, well, used to do a lot of fishing back in the mid '80s. And as I'm an outdoorsman, so yeah, we did fishing on there. 1 year I got the opportunity to duck hunt on it, but haven't been fortunate to get a duck blind lately. It's the luck of the draw, if you don't know that. But
that's right.
It's so weird. I do a lot of people know that's the only place in Illinois or in Cook County you can actually use a shotgun to hunt. They don't allow any shotgun hunting, but on Wolf Lake you can actually use duck and goose hunt. And on the Indiana side, they won't let you duck and goose hunt on the Indiana side, which is kind of different.
But Jim, that's true that they weren't allowed, but they continued to hunt up until about 1974.
Oh, really? So okay, so in the 60s,
it wasn't legal. It wasn't. They started cracking down in the mid 70s.
Yeah. Well, and plus on the Indiana side, Illinois, well, you just have commercial on the Illinois side, most of it. You have some houses on the north side, but Indiana, you have Hammond. There's a lot of houses in the Indiana side. You know what I'm saying, off Calumet Ave there.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, that's memories I have of Wolf Lake. Didn't do any smelting though. I was also smelt fisherman, but didn't do any smelting on Wolf Lake. Did they ever have smelting Wolf Lake? Do you know?
I haven't heard of it. Of course, my go-to person on that would be Joe Kushek.
Yeah, Joe. And how's he doing, by the way? Is he doing okay?
Fine. I ran into him the other day, and
Oh, okay.
he's a really interesting character. Eve, you should, I don't know if you know Joe Kushek, but he's from Hammond, lives in Hammond, he's retired from BP, but he has fished his whole life at Wolf Lake. And he and his nephew over the last 5 years have retrieved more than 3,000 tires from Wolf Lake and
oh, wow. So they're dumping tires over there too, huh?
Well, these are 40-year-old tires. Some of them are 50 years old. These have been been in the area for a couple of decades at least. So, and it's just amazing. And they continue. And so I saw him just a couple of days ago. I was riding my bike along the trail, and he and his nephew were out there, and they were cleaning up. And this time it wasn't tires so much as just bottles. And you know, from 30 years ago, there's certain areas there that just have never been cleaned up. So that's kind of a good part of his life was going out and cleaning up around the area. But he also takes some kids out there, and he teaches them about just the environment, and they find nests out there, and he shows them around. And so he's always out at Wolf Lake for one thing or the other. Very interesting guy.
Yeah, so he shows a good guy.
So
he's a big participant in Isaac Waltling at Trap League at one time. I think it slowed down after he retired, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen him out by the club, but yeah, he's a smart fisher. He's knowledgeable about all the fishing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to hook up with him, find those hot spots. After 40 years, you do find those, right?
Yeah, he knows Wolf Lake, and I used to get Christmas trees, try to collect them and get them over to him, and so he knows where all the those are too.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, all right.
All right. So anything more, Eve? Do you have?
No, but I just happened to flash on my sort of younger experiences at George Lake. I remember also going there because that's like a block from my house. And so the walking path is there now, which is wonderful. And you can connect with all over from there. But when I was a kid, that was a train track. And, back in those days, our mothers just set us loose and we just went all over the place. So I don't know that we were really supposed to be there, but there was fencing around there. And I remember that there was like and this is also by Federated Metal. So Atchison Avenue dead ends right on 122nd Street in the lake. And so there was some brush there next to the tracks. I remember we found a rusty clock and fresh orange peels, and we were convinced that hobos were living there that had come in, that were traveling through on the train because the track was right there. So we developed all these fanciful, ideas about what was going on there. But I remember going by the lake, like getting through a fence or over a fence or something like that, and the rocks had been stained green. So there was some kind of chemical or something over there that we probably shouldn't have been, near. But that's what we did when we were kids. I mean, we just wander around, and I never did figure out where I'm not sure what that, there were a lot more tracks around here. There were tracks that crossed Calumet at Sheffield. I don't know where all those tracks went. But as a kid, it was an object of much fascination, because also if you were thinking about running away from home, my fantasy was, well, you'd get on a boxcar there and then go to, places unknown. That would be the plan. So never executed, but that would be the plan.
So the tracks went parallel to George Lake on the north end?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and up right next to Federated Metals.
Okay, right.
So there's a fence separating that plant, which is another metal plant in recent years, and they're not there anymore. But I don't remember if that fence was there when the track was there.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that on that northwestern part of George Lake, was quite contaminated, and they about 15 years ago they came in and removed it, and that's when they drained the lake and removed all the contaminated soil that would maybe went into about 25 feet into the water if we were there. And but they left it there, and they just covered it with additional soil. And so, but the contaminants are still there, but it should be safe because it's protected. But
so that was the soil around George Lake?
And in just the northwest corner.
Okay, okay.
Or I mean, not northwest, I mean the northeast corner.
Okay.
Right next to Federated Metal, right?
Right.
Yeah, and that's the area that was quite contaminated, and so they had to drain the lake, and then to go into and to remove some of the contamination.
What year did they do that?
I think it was probably around 2010 or 2005.
Okay.
Because I had my offices there at the Environmental Education Center, and that was going on.
Well, I totally missed that. Of course, I was working at the time, so very back in those days. But yeah, I don't, because that would have been. I'm trying to imagine George Lake drained.
That it's quite a shallow lake all the way around. It's more of a land than a lake, but yeah, it's only about 3.5 feet in the deepest part. The north side, the south side is much different. They dug out a lot of sand there. That could be 15 foot deep at some areas for the golf course.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
Mike, just a final thought on my end. I keep thinking of the 7 kids we raised, mainly in the country out here, Green Garden, between Peatown and Frankfurt, and very safe. And the 10 grandkids are all in safe areas. But growing up there with, like I said, the high adventure suspense of Wolf Lake, with the industry. But then I couple that, I was thinking the 41 Outdoor, BAB,
yes,
Calumet Park. What a place! I say, what a place to grow up. And you know what? I had paper outside. I had money on me. I delivered to people every day. You could do anything. And you know what? I never had any fears of someone's going to abduct me or do something to me. It's amazing. I thought how safe and how I thought we were at least middle class. Only on senior high school did they say, no, you're not. you're if best lower middle class. I said, I am. I mean, it's all about a wonderful place to grow up in that era. I mean, missile sites, you know,
Yeah.
El Capone, you know, where's the money? You know, and then we didn't even think about the pollution that I would wipe off my car, all the
Yeah.
dust granules. Didn't know how dangerous it was until like later in high school. But it still was just a wonderful place. You know.
Did you, and you grew up on the east side, you said?
Yes.
Okay. So did you, well, you may not have seen this, but there's documentary in progress that I saw at Intuit Art Gallery in Chicago, and it was an exhibition of Roman Villarreal's art. He's an artist and activist on the east side.
I saw that at Intuit as well, Steve.
Were you there?
The one that the girl from 102nd Avenue H did, that one?
No,
yeah. Wait, no.
Because
no, the guy is Roman Villarreal. He's made some sculpture, like the most obvious one is the one at Steelworkers Park. It's a sculpture of the steelworkers family, you know, mom, dad, and kids, and a dog. Yeah, and he's got other sculptures in the area, and also one on Lake Michigan of a mermaid, which has been moved from one site to another. But anyway, during that like gallery opening, they previewed a movie called, what was, Mike, were you there at that night?
No, I was at the Film Museum with Roman and Maria, and then they had to leave early because
to come, right?
Yeah, but I didn't go. I was there about a week before.
Okay.
So where's the art now?
The art is everywhere. I mean, there's some on the southeast side. Somewhere around here, I have a brochure that has some.
Do you have the brochure too, Mike?
Pardon?
Do you have the brochure?
No, but I just when you were out at Big Marsh, that was that night. But if it was daylight, you could walk about 100, 200 feet, and you will see his work.
I did see some sculptures out there. I just didn't know what they were.
Yeah, it
probably is.
Villarreal,
Villareal.
Double R, RREAL.
Oh, okay.
I'll look for that. You know, two other very good films. I thought the young lady was about the closing of the steel mills and how it affected her father, especially, and family. And she was from 107th Avenue H, a member as part of her master's or doctorate at Columbia. And then a guy I grew up with, James Nacella, he did things like Teen Wolf, Diagnosis Murder. He was the director.
Yeah.
And, but his first film was Miss Southeast Side. And he went to Harvard. He was a Rhodes Scholar, University of Essex. And he came back to our old high school and started making movies. And thought it was supposed to be English class, but he's making movies. But he did one on Miss Seaside that is hilarious. And they played it on public TV. It's in the archives. If it's somewhere around, you have to see it.
Oh, okay.
It is a great study of what it's like to grow up on the Southeast Side. Yeah. And royalty is Miss Southeast Side at Labor Day festivals.
This documentary is very similar to that because it chronicles what life was like before the mills shut down. Excuse me. And so they were talking about how very diverse it was, and how wonderful it was. There was always something to do, always stuff going on. Everybody had money. And they also talked about the racism against Black people living on the
sure. Absolutely.
But they said everybody had something. There was always something going on. And then the mill shut down. And of course, Republic Steel shut down in a day. I mean, people showed up to work and then it was, go home. We're not here.
That's where my family, all my family worked there.
But this was a preview of that documentary that ostensibly was not finished yet. So we were getting to see a kind of a sneak preview of this. They were still working on it, and I can't remember the name of it. I'd have to dig up my notes.
Yeah, if you could communicate through Micah, I'd love to see that.
Okay.
Or I could access it online or somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask Mike, or Eva, if there's any way we could get links of these documentaries. They're on the internet, probably, right?
This documentary isn't available yet because that's what. And I made I made a concerted effort to be there that night because, however, I found out about this, and it might have been on one of your meetings, Michael. I said, I've got to go to that. I want to see this documentary. And it was a wonderful evening, and I got to see more of Roman's art, which is fantastic, and see the Intuit Gallery, which is an art gallery for what they call outsider art, meaning for people, they display art that is made by people who've not been, quote unquote, trained by the establishment. And Roman never had any art classes. He is just self-taught. But his art, he's been doing his art since he was a very young man, and I think he's in the 70s now. And he's wonderful. His art is really fantastic. He does sculpture mainly, but he also paints.
Yeah, he used to work at Southworks.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Hey, Mike,
wow.
Mike, do you live on the same street as Verdoliak?
yes.
You do, don't you?
He's in the neighborhood. He's about two blocks from my house.
Do you know Marianne Foncino, who still lives there? She's my cousin. Her brother Frankie did his dissertation on the mills. He just retired from Triton, where he was department chair for like 30 years. Do you know her, Marianne Foncino?
No, I know.
Okay, but she lives right by you. I know that. She's my cousin, so you know.
Foncino. How do you spell her last name?
Fonscno. Fanscno.
Does she know a lot? Does she know a lot of story about Fast Eddie? Huh?
I used to hear a lot. I remember the day we moved in. I know the guy Frank Giulio did his plumbing because I was writing for the Hammond Times then. I know more. I printed stuff. I thought they were going to shoot me.
I was say you got death threats if you're printing stuff.
I could tell you stories you wouldn't believe. How many? And how many shootings I saw that I witnessed. Yeah. I know. That was a wild time back then, early 70s. But now that I'm an old man, I don't think they're looking for me anymore.
Yeah.
Back to the smelt fishing days. All I know is a lot of those guys are carrying concealed weapons, and I'm sure it was not legal in the city at that time to have a concealed weapon. But yeah, we had to go through some by Wolf Lake to get to, for the 95th Pier, and man, it was you're right. There were some crazy times in the 70s.
Yeah.
Survives how we survived, right? Oh
yeah.
I just didn't hang out with the wrong crowd, basically, I guess is probably the best solution to it. But
I keep my distance and just write about them. That's what.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so we've been at this an hour, a little more than an hour. And I would just want to mention, Michael, when you were talking about Christine Wally. Her book was Exit O or Exit Zero. I'm sorry.
Okay.
She's the one that teaches at MIT.
Yeah.
Yeah. And her father worked at Wisconsin Steel.
That's it. Yeah. I remember seeing that on public TV. Right.
Yeah. And it was on Channel 11. Yeah. But that is, I've got a copy of the book, I think.
Oh, good. Yeah. I have a family member that went to school with her, and he was telling me all about it. And that's how I ended up. He was her neighbor. Everyone's a neighbor in the Southeast.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was her neighbor. And he told me about it too, and so then he said real nice girl and stuff like that, so.
Yeah.
I'd love to read it.
Okay. I'll see if I should be able to find it. I'm just loading a couple of books to Dave McGowan on the influx of African Americans and Latinos to the southeast side from World War I and World War II.
You know, when I was in high school, the first African American girl, her name was Renee Miller, and came to our class when I was a sophomore. Because she was M and I was a G, we sat next together in about every class. And so it was interesting how I became like her protector.
Yeah.
And the school kind of knew it. And I was the only one. She said, she told me this at prom. She said, you know what? Because I danced with her. Said, you're the only guy who's ever danced with me in high school. Wow. Isn't that something? Yeah. I said, what? Those idiot friends of mine. And I'd always get, hey, how's your girlfriend? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then her brother came, and then my senior year, we had this undefeated basketball team and the freshman team, and they had like 2 black players. But so yeah. It never, now it's, well, we had 1,200 kids when I was there. Now they're down to about 180.
Yeah.
Probably 100 African Americans and 80 Latinos. Maybe a traditional Caucasian or 2, because I'd go to board meetings there. I was doing volunteering with them with certain projects, but that hasn't been a few years. But that, you know, that was there for an event last year. Yeah. So it totally changed.
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you stories about me talking to the priests, and I'll never forget one priest said to me, he said, what did this neighborhood do to you? Because I was saying, well, what's wrong with them living over here and we're living over here? And then he was my favorite priest. He goes, Michael, I don't know what they did to you here, but you're all crazy over here. I said, they live there, we live here. What's the big deal? But then I learned, oh no, that's not right. You know.
Yeah. But Roman can tell you some stories about Calumet Park and the fights that erupted between those from South Chicago and those from the East Side. And I mean, in fact, I was around him and he was being interviewed by someone, I think, from the University of Chicago. And so I just, you know, stood around and listened to the interview, and it was amazing, and it was somewhat hilarious at some point.
You know, I was there because we practiced football there, and then afterwards I walked over, and he was with the Nazi party, Frank somebody. It wasn't Costello, it was Frank, and he was giving a big speech and they all had the Nazi swastikas on. This is like 66 or 67.
Oh yeah.
I couldn't believe it. You know? Yeah. Well, I couldn't quite hear what James was saying. What did James say?
Jim?
And Steve Dowell. I was saying the Skokie. Remember the Skokie incident?
Oh yeah. Well, these are the
Nazi. They let the Nazi mark in Skokie.
Yeah, these are the same guys.
It's like amazing that they allow that group to have freedom of press. I mean, like freedom of speech. Like these people want to kill people. Like what? They don't have no right to speech.
And,
like,
and the weirdest thing was, I don't remember anybody protesting him. I just stood there, took the literature, and walked home. No one was protesting him. I didn't quite understand what he was so mad about. You know what I mean? He's screaming it from the podium. I was a high school kid.
Oh yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, and didn't he show up? And the Blues Brothers, wasn't there a couple scenes like
yes, you're right.
American Nazi Party?
Right.
It was a couple scenes of the American Nazi Party. And
we had Martin Luther King walk down Ewing Avenue, and I was on a rooftop watching him, and our priest was arm in arm with him, and there were a couple hundred walking down the street, and the people that I saw from my neighborhood throwing rocks at them and that, I couldn't believe it. But the cops would arrest kids who were throwing rocks, take them a block away and say, go home. Nobody was arrested. Oh. And they marched right down the middle of the street all the way to Kell Park. One last little side story. The greatest priest I knew, he's the one who convinced me to change my ideas. This guy, Father Healy. He at St. Francis Sales Church at Mass at 10 o'clock, he made this big speech at the homily. He said, if you're a real Christian, you will march with Dr. King and me today. And half the church got up, screamed at him, or just walked out. And I'm sitting there, you know, I was like a junior in high school. So I go, what the hell is going on here? And sure enough, Father Healy was arm in arm with him and got hit by rocks and stuff like that. I don't remember anybody getting arrested. Nobody.
Was that Annunciata Church? St.
Francis de Sales.
Oh, St. Francis.
Which is now closed. It was the German missionary church built in the 1880s.
It's on Ewing, correct?
Yes, 102nd Ewing. The church was closed, just like St. George's, and now they're supposed to all go to
right.
Which I think is ludicrous, but
it's just a high school now.
The high school, the elementary's gone. They were renting it out to public schools. The high school, like I said, it's down to 180, and they rent out the top floor to the public schools.
Oh, do they? Okay.
I know it's very odd.
Well,
that's very interesting that the public schools, so they don't build their own school. They just rent it from a private school. Wow.
They had this giant Gallistel school, which I used to live next door to at 102nd and Ewing. It's a giant school, but there's an overload of students.
Yeah.
The other thing about closing St. Francis, I went there for Christmas just to see it, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It was all in Spanish. It was packed to the gills, and they had like 5 masses. I don't know why they closed it. Maybe the people didn't contribute enough money or something. You know, who knows?
Well,
but if anything,
all those good-paying jobs went away to afford private school tuition. What is that? I know, like Mount Carmel out here in Chicago Heights, as I've heard, it's like, I mean, it's like ridiculous. It's like 14, 15 grand, and if you're
right, I've got family that are big alumni of that place. Believe me.
Yeah. I mean, they literally, if you play extracurricular, it's about 17, 18 grand. In my office, of course, one of the guys was sending his kid. There's the mortgage guy, and he told me he sent his kid was trying to get him into like one of the Big Ten university football programs. At Mount Carmel was a pretty good feeder school, I guess, and in Notre Dame, obviously. But he said he's costing him about 17 grand. That was like 2 years ago.
In the 50s, I went to the grammar school, St. Francis de Sales. It was $3 a month. $3. You had to give. I'd bring the envelope with the $3 in it once a month, and my family would complain why they're charging us $3. We give them, and then the high school was $100 a month when I started. When I ended it, it got up to $175. I was outraged.
Yeah.
I mean, $175 a year. Pardon me, a year.
Yeah.
And now that school is $10,000.
Yeah.
Although I was told by the principal, only 2 kids pay the full boat. The rest are all like partial scholarships. Like they give them a discount based on their income.
So.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow. Huh. Yeah, interesting. That's a sad time. But the steel mills, by the way, just a side note, the last note for myself. Side note, I just talked to a U.S. Steel guy over out of Gary. They just signed a contract, 4-year contract, 25% pay increase over 4 years.
Wow.
That's something must be coming back to America, right? I mean, who's
ever betting on inflation, one or the other.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, like I told him, your inflation's 8%. That's the good news. Is 6% pay raise. The bad news is you still have negative earnings coming, people. You either get another job or something. I don't know. Yeah, unfortunately. But anyways, I digress. All right.
Well, there's a great book in this somewhere. Mike, you ready to get your pen out? And
yeah, not again. But you know what? It's I mean, doing the research for the book brought me into a lot of things I left out of it too. But anyway, it's I can't do any more.
Mike, we'll have to. Does a fellow colleague over there? Does he know anyone in book publishing? Maybe you can get him in advance there.
Yeah.
Be like a politician, Mike. You get it at book advance.
Well, I got one person that reviewed my book, and that's probably all I'll get. So
it's a fine review.
yeah, it was. I didn't really read it for a long time because I just don't like reading things. And then I thought, well, I better read it. And I was surprised at how favorable it was.
Mm-hmm.
Now I think I'll probably memorize it. It's only 3 pages long. So anyway, so you know what? I learned a lot today, and I'm the only one that hasn't grown up in this area, and so I'm always interested in people's memories. And if you ever read my book, that whole chapter is my favorite. I think it's the 4th chapter in the book, and it's I had I recorded a few memories of in later life, but the memories I really like are the ones when people are early teens and maybe preteens, and that was the world to them, and folks would Joe Krushek wasn't the only one hunting right up to the 1970s. There were a lot of people hunting and trapping. And I always like to hear the stories of those that were trapping.
Michael, you just gave me the title for my book on the Southeast side. You know, to paraphrase Kevin Costner in Field of Dreams, my title is going to be "This Ain't Iowa."
That's good. That's good.
Well,
that is excellent.
I thought
Mike's from Iowa. You know,
I thought I brought a little bit of Iowa with me, but
you bring it wherever you go. What are you talking about?
I was raised in Iowa.
Right, that's what I was saying. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And that place was only about 30 miles from where I live.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you grow up, Mike?
Field of Dreams. In eastern Iowa.
Like what city?
Like between, it was a small farming town with a penitentiary, and kind of like midway between Cedar Rapids and Dubuque.
I went to school in Dubuque for 4 years at Clark University.
Oh, is that right?
So if you say Zwingle, Iowa to me, I know where you're talking about. If you say Epworth, Iowa to me, I know where you're talking about. So I know there's a lot of those little small towns because aside from the Mother Macaulay girls from Chicago, the rest of the girls at that school were from little towns in Iowa.
Yes. Yeah. And there's a lot of little towns in Iowa. And I went to Iowa City for undergraduate work and graduate work. So I was in Iowa for some time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So okay, so we've been here about an hour and a half. Does anyone want to add anything? Or should we celebrate our victory over Wolf Lake Terminals?
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
Great news.
Yeah, read the decision. It was very nice.
Yeah, we now see it, but this is 10 years old, right? So I've been in this battle for 10 years. But now all that happens is that they'll apply for a new permit and we'll contest it. And hopefully we can get enough support in contesting it. The problem has been, it's an Illinois problem because they're on the state line and they dump all that stuff into Illinois. So Indiana's not going to complain. They're not getting any of that. But it's small enough so a lot of people for the city and the state and the county, don't get that upset. Back in 2014, I was able to get the US EPA, Illinois EPA, and IDEM out, and they all found fault with Wolf Lake terminals. And in fact, the violations that Illinois was concerned with were never corrected. And so in October of 2014, the Illinois EPA filed suit, or began to file suit. And then the November elections came along, and the administration changed in Springfield, and there was never any suit. It was never completed. So the violations are still there. It's just that Illinois, and I've been trying to convince them to refile, to sue them, and maybe now we might be able to convince folks to do that. But anyway, it's just another battle, and so while I'm happy we won the suit, all it means is that we're going to have to continue our fight. But anyway, that should be.
Hey, Mike. So bottom line is that company's not getting fined or penalized or anything. No money, dollar amounts.
We're dealing with the state of Indiana. They're not. They're not. The fact that we won, it's remarkable. Mm-hmm. That because not too many people win against the state of Illinois, state of Indiana.
Oh yeah, no.
Because in Illinois, that company wouldn't even exist because it's so badly. Things they do would never be allowed in Illinois. So anyway,
it is amazing because everyone thinks that Indiana is such environmentalist, conservationist, hunting, fishing, and I mentioned Jim Sweeney, and there's groups out there, grassroots groups out there, but it's just amazing what that. The more I'm involved with the Isaac Walton League and that, and just to see how that Indiana Department of IDEM is just, I don't know, is someone on the take? I have no idea. I mean, they allow, like Portage and U.S. Steel dumped 200 pounds of carcinogenic material into Lake Michigan. Did really nothing, just a slap on the wrist on them, and they were fighting it. U.S. Steel was, and it's like
BP has done its share as well. So anyway.
Okay.
So anyway, so I think I'm thanking everybody for showing up, and none of you are going to Eve, you're going to the hike this afternoon, right?
Yes, I'll be there.
Okay, we're going to have fun there. I don't know if you know Joan Chris, but she used to teach at Calumet College, and she's working at a high school in Hammond now. But she and her family will be there, and then someone from the Field Museum will be there.
Oh, good. I'm looking forward to it. And we have some fairly nice weather. I mean, it's not rainy or snowing.
Sunny and 37.
Yeah.
When my knee's better, I'll do it next year.
Yeah, I know it. You're doing pretty well, Mike, in recovering.
I'm hopping around.
Yeah. So you don't have that cane anymore, so.
No, I was hitting too many people with it. They were going to arrest me eventually.
Okay.
So I just want to also mention, I was mentioning this documentary. I am going to, I'm going to pour through my notes and whatever else I have here to try to find the name of that documentary, because surely it will be released at some point. The documentary that I was talking about that screened at Intuit.
Yeah.
I will, Michael, I will get that to you so that you can share it with others as soon as I find the name of it and the gentleman who is putting that together.
Yeah, I've read about it. I've seen it somewhere, and I know he's doing it. And of course, you know that the Association for the Wolf Lake Initiative is the fiscal sponsor for a 1-hour documentary called Wolf Lake Abides.
Oh.
And it covers, it's kind of centered on the Anthropocene epoch over the last 200, 300 years. And
okay.
so that's been keeping me busy as well.
So now that's in progress, or is that available?
That's that's on the early stages, kind of the developmental stage. But if you I'll be keeping everybody up to date on that. So you'll see things in the coming days, I think, or coming months, at least from Holly.
Okay. Oh, I look forward to that.
Okay, very good. All right, we'll see everybody. Take care. Have a good day.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks for doing it. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't make this afternoon, Mike, but
yeah,
next year, shoot for next year.
Okay, very good.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, we'll talk to you.